and Garden is a production of the University of Minnesota Morris in cooperation with Pioneer Public Television. Funding for this program has been provided by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund through a vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4th, 2008. Additional support provided by Mark and Margaret Yekel Julien in honor of Shalom Hill Farm, a nonprofit rural education retreat center in a beautiful prairie setting near Windham in southwestern Minnesota. ShalomHillFarm.org.
They say that everyone has a talent of some kind. Well, I think I was towards the end of the line when talent was being handed out, while our guest today was at the head of the class. I'm Mary Holm, host of Prairie Yard and Garden, and come along as we visit someone who can capture and create the beautiful images of Mother Nature. Today's guest on Prairie Yard and Garden is a very talented woman. I have seen her play several instruments at concerts, make the prettiest succulent planters, and paint the most beautiful scenes. Della Conroy is amazing at being able to capture the beauty of Mother Nature and bring it to life in many ways. Della, welcome to Prairie Yard and Garden.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here.
How did you get started as an artist, or have you always loved to draw and paint?
Right, I got started when I was a little kid. Just started with the scissors and a catalog, and I've been painting and drawing all my life.
Have you taken lessons too?
Just late in life, I've taken a lot of lessons. I try to study with a major artist every year, do a workshop.
Do you generally paint outdoors when the weather allows, or do you usually paint in your studio?
I usually paint in my studio where conditions are perfect. But I do go outside once in a while, especially if I'm with a group of friends who like to paint outdoors.
How does nature inspire your art?
Well, it's all around us and it's beautiful. It's what we see, it's what we live with. It's just part of who we are.
How do you transfer that beauty from the garden into your canvas?
Well, I don't just imagine them, not too often, once in a while, but usually I either pick flowers and set up a still life or photograph flowers, especially if I'm in someone else's garden.
When you start out, do you sketch out the picture first, or do you kind of look at what you're painting or going to be painting and then start the lines, or how do you even start?
I usually start with a viewfinder. You know, it looks like a camera. I pretend I'm taking a picture with a camera and I get it set up just like I'd like it, and then I sketch it out.
What kind of canvases do you use, or are there different kinds that you use for the different types of paintings that you do?
Yes, for pastel paintings I use a sanded paper. It's rough like sandpaper and it holds the pastel. For watercolor, I use different kinds of watercolor paper, and there are many different kinds. For oil painting, I use canvas, yes. And for acrylic, I usually use paper, but sometimes canvas.
For those of us that aren't artists, we're used to latex-based paint and oil paints. What are all these different kinds that you just told us about?
Well, latex is acrylic. It's just like what you would use on your house. It's water-based. And oil is like also what you would paint your house with, but it's oil-based, oil paints. But the difference is artist paints are more archival. They're better quality. They'll last for 200 years.
Do you have a favorite medium to use?
No, it depends on what subject I'm doing. If I'm doing a painting of someone else's garden and everything has to be detailed, I'll use pastel. If I'm painting for fun, I'll probably use acrylic or watercolor.
Do you give lessons to other people too?
Yes, I do. Every spring I have a watercolor workshop for children, and the youngest was 3, the oldest was 12 this year, and they came every day for an hour and a half.
That had to be kind of a challenge,
Yeah.
working with that different age
Yeah.
group.
It was fun.
And now I also have seen that you have done beautiful prairie scenes. Did you grow up with the prairie, or what inspires those scenes?
I grew up in Alberta, Minnesota, which is prairie as prairie can be. And so, yeah, that's all I've ever known is what's right around us here.
Are there certain colors that you like to use for each season, like for fall or for winter?
Winter is white, gray, and brown, but I try to add some violets and warm it up a little bit. And fall, I use fall colors, summer, greens, and spring, neon green.
Really?
Well, yeah, it's just really bright.
And I know, in addition to all of the painting that you do and the wonderful artwork that you do, you play instruments too. How many instruments do you play?
Well, in high school and college, I played tuba. And I play piano. I'm a church organist. That's been my thing forever. This is my 51st year as a church organist. And I belong to a little bluegrass group, Thursday Night Jam, and I play my accordion for that. In summer, we like to be outside, and every Thursday night we have Thursday Night Jam here at the studio.
Now, I've also seen you have been involved with Panache. Is that the correct pronunciation? Tell us about that a little bit.
Well, Panache was started by Linda Cook, and she is into gardening and plants, and Panache means to something awesome, something great. To do it with panache means to do it really, in a great style, and that's Linda's thing. So I would put on a watercolor class, and she would serve the food and set up the plants and all of the environment with panache.
When we talk about your art, I saw something on your website called Yupo. Can you explain what that is?
Yupo is a paper that I use. It's not paper, it's plastic. It's Japanese, it's used for printmaking, and watercolor artists have decided to now start using it. And I get all kinds of creative, wonderful effects with that paper because the watercolor doesn't soak into the paper, it sits on top and does whatever it wants to.
Now, I know that you have also recently gotten into doing greeting cards with a local author, Linda Hodgson. Can you
Right.
tell us about that too?
Well, Linda and I team up. I'll give her 10 paintings, and they're all done on Yupo. And she takes them home and keeps them in her house for about a month or two and thinks about them. And then if something comes to her, she writes. So we have sympathy and comfort. We have mother and dad. We have thank you. We have Christmas. Right now we're working on birthday.
Tell us about your studio. How did you create or get your studio started?
Well, this studio was originally the carriage house for the Erickson home next door, and the Ericksons owned the lumber yard, and the carriage was kept in there and the hay. And in the 50s, it was purchased by a couple from Morse, and they made it into their retirement home. And so they added rooms and put a kitchen on and a bathroom. And ever since, it's been used as a family dwelling. And about 8 years ago, the Clorens decided to sell it, and we bought it because it's right next to our well drilling business, and we turned it into my studio.
It looks like it's a very unique building in that it has some features that are quite unusual. Can you describe those?
Well, the eaves come out at a curve, and they go out at a curve at the bottom of the building, and we think it was probably built by German immigrants because they would probably be the only people that would know how to do those things.
Did you take the door off and put windows in order to create beautiful light for your studio?
No,
or?
that was all, everything in the studio is just as it was when I bought it. Yep. So that was all done in the 50s.
Would you be willing to show us how you actually set up a still life picture or get ready to do a still life picture?
Sure, that'd be fun.
Della, show us how you're doing this still life.
Well, I went to the garden this morning, got a bunch of vegetables, and when I'm choosing vegetables for a still life, it's way different than if you're going to the fair. For example, at the fair, you want 3 potatoes that are the same size for uniformity, right? Mm-hmm. But for art, you want mama, papa, baby. That's what you want. Because anything with variety is always more interesting to the viewer. When I set up a still life, I don't want anything pointing out of the picture. I want the viewer's eye to remain in the picture as long as it can. You know, I don't want a cucumber poking out of the picture so that your eye would then go out of the picture. So like this one is going right out of the picture, I will crop him off. He will not be part of the picture. And then I usually take a viewfinder like this, and I hold it in different ways, and one eye is shut, and try to find just the right way that looks entertaining, because basically I'm entertaining you when I show you a picture.
How do you know what colors to put together?
Well, in this case, I would use the local color, what the colors that the objects are, because this is a realistic picture. But if I were doing a fantasy picture, I could use any colors I want. Then I would try to make colors that go well together, or colors that look good in a certain room.
Well, I even see, just even your arrangement of the colors, I guess, takes quite an eye to, because you've got some of the greens together, and then you've got different colors together on this side too.
Yeah. Well, one thing you can do to unify your colors is you can start out by just doing a big wash over your whole painting of a certain color. And that will be in your background, and it'll shine through everything that you do and unify all the colors in your painting. And I do that quite often. Yeah.
So what kind of paper are you using?
This is watercolor paper, and it's rough. Would you like to touch it?
I would.
It's quite rough.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there'll be a lot of texture with this. And then the next thing I did is I took out my phone, and I actually took some pictures of my still life, because the light is a certain way now, and it's not going to stay that way for long. And if I want to finish the picture later in my studio, I'll have a photograph to use to see how it actually was. Or I took several different views so I can change my mind if I want to, or come back in another day and do another one. If something is successful, I might do it more than once. Or if I'm having fun with something, I might do a series. I think I'll let the orange bleed into the potatoes.
What kind of paint are you using?
This is watercolor. It's the same watercolor as you use when you're a little kid in school. The only thing that's different here is I'm using really nice paper. And when you want your kids to paint, you can just get those little praying paint sets from the grocery store or from the dime store, but you really need to get them nice paper. Otherwise, it's hard for them to succeed. I mean, if you have to paint on typing paper, I can do it, but it's hard. It makes everything hard. It's like you need the right tools to do your work with. So now I'm just putting on all these background colors and letting them all bleed together. And then as the paper dries, I will tighten it up.
Do you need to let one color dry before you do another?
Not the way I paint. Everything I do is really fast. I like to let them bleed and run together. And then after it's dry, I might come in and tighten things up a little bit. But doesn't this look like fun? Anybody can do this. Anybody can do it. You take a couple classes and have fun and just do some things to relax and loosen up and lighten up. And
how long does it take you to do a picture usually? Or is there any kind of a time frame? It depends, I suppose.
If I'm doing something with a lot of detail, it can take Like the iris painting I did for the lady last week, that took me a couple weeks because there was a stained glass window, there was a lot of detail. And then I went over to the dentist office where she works, and I said, how do you like this? And she said, well, I like it, but I would like you to change this, this, and this. And then the dentist had some suggestions. I brought it back to my studio, worked on it a little more, and framed it up that afternoon.
So however you do it, you can change it sometimes too.
Yeah, well, with pastel, oil, or acrylic, you can keep making changes forever. With watercolor, you can't change so much because once it's on the paper, it's pretty much there. So that's why when I'm doing watercolor, I make a nice sketch, get everything planned out, and really know what I'm going after.
So had you sketched out these vegetables before you started to
Yep,
paint?
I sketched it out this morning. It's all here. Can you see those little pencil marks?
Yes, I can. Yep.
I think my tomatoes are going to have lots of yellow in them. And that yellow will shine through when I put some red on top of it. This is all wet on wet. Wet paint on wet paper. And after it's all dried, I will paint dry. And that's when I'll be adding details.
And when you do the dry,
Yeah.
what do you use? What kind of paint do you use then?
I use the same paint, but it'll be, it won't be wet like this. I'll be making dry marks to tighten up the images. And one trick I'll be using, I told you watercolorists have all kinds of tricks. I'll just take my Kleenex, and that's going to make the leaves of my carrots.
Oh, for heaven's sakes.
It'll work. Now it has to dry before I can do any more. But that's how I do a still life.
Wow.
Isn't
Just
that fun?
amazing. Yes, it is. And beautiful too.
Yeah, and this is a hobby that you can take up at any time in your life. In fact, a lot of people don't start painting until their kids are grown and they're retired, because then they have time. They take a class and...
What kind of light do you need in order to do your painting?
Usually not bright sunlight like this. You need light, but it's nice if it's from a north window and it's subtle and there's no glare.
So do you use special lights in your studio at all?
Yes, if I do, yeah.
So how long now will you have to wait to let this dry before you can finish it off?
It's pretty dry, so I think I can start adding some detail. And then I would take a smaller brush, and let's say I'm going to work on my cucumber. Cucumbers have lines, and I just keep building that way. Carrots have texture. I don't know why we quit painting when we get older. We always love it and enjoy it when we're kids, and then we put it aside and say we can't do it. Same with singing. People say, oh, I can't sing. Well, yeah, you can. You just aren't. Everybody can do all of these things and enjoy them, but for some reason we stop. I think life gets in the way, and work.
I think there's a lot of truth to that.
Make time for music, make time for art. I had one person who called me this spring and said, I just read something, if you love your wife and it's Valentine's Day, you should paint her a picture. Well, he said, I can't paint, so I thought I'd have you paint her a picture. I should have made him buy the roses that I had to buy to do that painting with. So anyway, that's how I start out. And I think I'll work on my tomatoes.
What kind of brushes are these?
These brushes are synthetic. They're not real hair. And I like them because they're cheap. I can just keep reusing them. When they wear out, I just get more. But I like the flat brush. Notice this brush is flat. And I like using big brushes, at least when I'm starting out, because I can get a lot done in a short amount of time. A lot of color goes on the paper. Some people use really tiny brushes and take weeks and weeks to do their painting. But that's not the kind of painting I enjoy doing. Okay. I like to go fast and move on. And I can always, if this painting doesn't turn out, I can always use it as a background for an acrylic painting or a pastel painting. And that would go right over the top of this watercolor.
Really?
Yeah.
Does that affect the colors of the next picture on top of it too?
Yeah,
Okay.
They would shine through. Notice that I like to get a lot of different colors in, say, a potato. I don't just want it to be a brown potato. There's a lot of violet, there's some orange bleeding in there, that was Mama Potato. Let's work on Papa Potato. You can't see him very much. He's kind of down in the depths of the box. Purple is a great dark. I use purple when I want something to be very dark. With watercolor, everything dries lighter than it really was. So you have to use more vibrant colors to start with. If you look at that tomato in the box, it's really got a lot of different colors in it, doesn't it?
It does. It does.
It's got red, it's got orange, it's got a little green. And then the highlights I can always wipe out with a sponge later, after everything is dry.
You're really capturing that tomato, you know, because it's got a little bit of a green shoulder, or it's still just ripening too, so.
Yeah, it's not quite ready, is it?
And you're capturing that just beautifully.
I try to load my brush with more than one color. Now I'm going to go after those leafy greens on the carrots. But I think I'll have to add some more detail. I can always take a colored pencil too and come in and make detail later. Anyway, that gives you an idea of how I start a painting. And
the plants jump from the box onto your picture.
There should be a dark, dark tomato down here in the bottom of the box. And to darken a red, I would use green underneath it. Now, what should I call this?
A garden salad.
Oh, that's a good one. That's the hardest part, you know, thinking up a title, dreaming up a title.
Oh, I could help with that.
Yeah.
Much more than the painting.
You'd be good at that part. Let's get some shadows in here.
I have a question. I'm looking to bring some great fall colors into my yard. What varieties do you recommend? Well, the classic fall color plant is this Euonymus elatus, or burning bush as it's called. And this gets spectacular fall color. It's a showstopper. Sometimes we call these trees traffic jam trees because people stop on the 3-mile drive here at the Arboretum and ooh and ah over it. Some of the other showstoppers as far as fall colors go are sugar maples. There's one really spectacular one right near the Bailey Shrub Walk. So another couple of plants that come to mind as far as fall color goes, sumac, the aromatic sumac, the Rhus aromatica or fragrant sumac has got really nice fall color, as well as the typical staghorn and the smooth sumac. Some other things that people really get excited about, I'm a little apprehensive about talking about it, but amber maple really does get nice fall color. I mean, you just can't beat it. We think it's somewhat invasive here, if not very invasive, at the Arboretum. but people in other climates west and north of the Twin Cities may not have as much problems with it. One plant that I'm highly touting right now for a substitute for amber maple is Acer triflorum, or three-flowered maple. It's another oriental species, but it doesn't have the invasive tendencies. It has beautiful bark, it has nice fall color. It's a small tree, similar to amber maple, but probably a little bit more refined and compact. So those are just a few of the examples of what we kind of recommend for fall color.
Ask the Arboretum Experts has been brought to you by the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum in Chanhassen, dedicated to enriching lives through the appreciation and knowledge of plants.
You have said that anybody can paint and learn how, and I'm not sure that I could ever do anything like this, but if people wanted to learn, how would you recommend they start?
Well, I would recommend that they go to YouTube and watch some how-to paint videos. Go to a store of some kind, Walmart, somewhere, pick up some little books on watercolors or acrylics, pick up a little set and start painting. And then when they get a little more confident, then they should sign up for a class.
Okay.
And different people teach classes, different art clubs promote classes. Every summer, Art of the Lakes Gallery in Battle Lake has a series of classes, and that's how I learn, is by taking classes.
If people want to see or want to look at your paintings and the beautiful things you've done, where can they find your items?
Well, they can go to my website, which is dellaconroy.com. And in fact, if you type in my name, you'll get all kinds of responses in Google about my art. But I belong to different galleries. I'm in Art of the Lakes Gallery in Battle Lake, Main Frames in Perham. There's a gallery in New London called 1,000 Cranes that has a lot of my art. And then I have some art here at the studio.
So people can visit any of those things or visit
Right.
your website or even come and visit you here at your beautiful studio. Thank you so much for teaching us how you do all of these things and for letting us come to visit you.
And thank you for coming. It's been fun.
Funding for this program has been provided by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund through a vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4th, 2008. Additional support provided by Mark and Margaret Yekel Julien in honor of Shalom Hill Farm, a nonprofit rural education retreat center in a beautiful prairie setting near Windham in southwestern Minnesota. ShalomHillFarm.org.